I'm sure you are aware of initiatives around the world to plant trees in an effort to tackle climate change and combat the biodiversity crisis. And here in Scotland there's a number of such initiatives aiming to restore the woodlands of Scotland and to reconnect the forests that we have left. So that word, regeneration, it might suggest that we can simply leave trees to regenerate by themselves without human intervention. So today we're going to go and investigate why growing and planting trees might be so important for effective woodland restoration here in the Highlands of Scotland. To answer this question, we're going to go and visit a tree nursery to find out not only why planting trees is so necessary, but also how you grow trees to help restore the woodlands of Scotland. We are up at Abernethy to visit a tree nursery run by the Cairngorms Connect partnership, and we are going to go and have a look around the nursery to look at how they grow trees and why growing and then planting trees is so important in this part of Scotland.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Simon.
Hi, I'm David.
Very nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too. Welcome to the Cairngorms Connect tree nursery.
Thank you very much.
I'm the tree nursery manager at Cairngorms Connect, and we're here at the Cairngorms Connect tree nursery on the RSPB Abernethy Reserve, in the middle of the largest remnant of Caledonian pine forest that used to be prevalent across the whole of Scotland. Yeah, we're fortunate enough to have our tree nursery here where we're growing trees for planting out on the open ground of the reserve. We're aiming to grow around 10,000 trees a year, and we're pretty much there.
When we wake, hear the birds and see the sun. Side by side our fears are done. Oh, the good times just begun.
This began life as a community tree nursery. The original funding to set it up was raised by the community group of Friends of Abernethy, and it's always continued in that vein. It's a real focal point for people to come and make friendships, build support networks. Just because we live in this stunning, beautiful area, it doesn't mean that people aren't, they don't have issues with bereavement or loneliness or depression. And the feedback we've got from some volunteers is having something with purpose is really important. That they can come, they can do something collectively that has a real tangible benefit for themselves, for the rest of the community, for the natural environment, and walk away having felt rightly that they've achieved something and something important. One of the best things about working here is kind of not related to the trees at all. It's seeing these friendships and these connections and that continuing sort of beyond the fence line of the nursery.
Oh, we know what we have, let's hold on tight. Found what we're looking for in life.
This reserve back kind of pre-1860 would have been collections of small crofts. The tenants were moved to other parts of the Seafield estate, and then what came after that was largely that the estate was run for pine forestry and for sport shooting of deer. When you do that, you want deer at quite high numbers, and probably at much higher numbers than you would necessarily have in a natural environment. Like a growing tree, it needs to grow ultimately, and if it's constantly being nibbled by deer, even if they're not completely killing the tree, they're stunting it to the extent that it's never going to reach sexual maturity, it's never going to broadcast its own seeds. So you've got like the older generation of trees which will naturally decline over time and die, and then nothing coming through to replace it. And what you end up is with a forest that is unnaturally absent of certain species, but broadleaf trees being one of them.
I suppose that really leads on to another question that is often raised when we talk about woodland regeneration, and particularly when we talk about planting trees for woodland regeneration. And that's, would it not be simpler or cheaper maybe to simply work on controlling deer numbers and then let the trees and the woodlands regenerate naturally without the need for planting?
It comes down to a judgment call of whether natural regen alone will be successful. Well, natural regen might be successful over a period of 1,000 years, and it's just our limited human perspective and impatience that makes us want to go out and plant, because we want to see things happen in our lifetimes. You know, we're quite short-lived things compared to the ecology of the Cairngorms. There's other folk, and I'd probably be more in agreement with it, who say we're in the midst of a climate emergency, and waiting 1,000 years isn't really commensurate to the level of a climate and biodiversity emergency that we find ourselves in. We're planting the trees that, in our opinion, are either not going to recolonise naturally or not going to recolonise fast enough naturally. We want to see things happen in our lifetime, because if things don't happen within our lifetime, they will deplete even further beyond a point of repair.
Now, before we go and see how David propagates and grows these trees, I have a small favour to ask. I love making these films. I will make them regardless of what anyone says. But if you like this film, please do hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, tell me what you liked about this film, tell me what you do for your mental health to get you out there that really helps you feel better and helps you feel a sense of achievement. But let's get back and see how they propagate these trees.
Right now I'm just filling some cells with peat-free compost. These are going to receive some of the cutting material that we've just taken from the wild, from another part of the Cairngorms Connect partnership area, which is creeping willow. So what we're doing is one of my colleagues has gone out, taken some cuttings from a nearby area. We're going to grow those on and then see how many take. These are our cuttings that came from the wild earlier this week into the compost. But yeah, it's super easy. It's great even for like young school kids and things. If we had 5 people working at this for 2 hours, maybe a little bit, if it was, some of our sessions can be up to 3.5 hours. Yeah, I'd be confident we could easily get 600 trees done in a session. The downside is that every cutting is effectively a clone. It's a genetic copy of the parent plant. So if you start with one plant and make 1,000 cuttings, you've basically just grown one plant 1,000 times. So one of the options of what we might end up doing with this is that we might set up a seed stand where we take 50, 60 individuals would be optimal, and we'd put them all within about 100 metres of each other. Let the bees and other pollinators do their thing. And a month or 2 after they've flowered, they should then be producing seed. We pick that seed and sow it in trays. That'll, all being well, that'll germinate, and we'll end up with, just from a few catkins, you can get hundreds and hundreds of seedlings. And like I say, every seedling is a genetic individual. And then we'll label that, water it in, and then that'll go in the polytunnel. And then hopefully start to sprout in the next few weeks. This is the result from our downy willow seed orchards. These are basically seedlings that would not exist without our intervention. The parent plants all are far too far apart in the wild to cross-pollinate with each other. the genetic makeup of them is consistent with them having been a much larger, more interconnected population of willows in the relatively recent past that has then become fragmented. So yeah, to be able to get those remnant species before they completely disappear, those remnant individuals, we've now got seedlings growing, as I say, that would never have been never been produced in the wild. And it's as simple as that, with a lot of weeding and watering and yeah, happiness and disappointment all in between, yeah.
That's it. I hope that gives you some idea about how Cairngorms Connect are growing trees, and more importantly, why they are growing trees for woodland restoration across the Highlands of Scotland. So I hope you can see that while trees can and do regenerate, the seed source up here in Scotland in these degraded woodlands and forests just doesn't exist. And even if we waited thousands of years, many of these species simply wouldn't recover. Of course, that's not to say that where these species do exist, we need to do planting. The planting is very much targeting the species that are not going to recover on their own without some degree of human intervention. But the good news is that something is being done about it, and thousands of trees are being planted across the Cairngorms with the help of a dedicated team of volunteers. It's certainly a lot of work and takes a lot of dedication, but undoubtedly it makes a huge difference to the biodiversity of Scotland. But it's not just the wildlife that benefits, there's also a huge impact on the local community, and of course the many, many volunteers that come here to feel a sense of achievement and do something to help restore Scotland's biodiversity. If you do want to come and be a part of this, if you want to come and volunteer at the nursery up here at Abernethy Reserve, I will leave a link in the description below. But until next time, from Abernethy Reserve, have a wonderful day.